Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Story Hour. I'm your host, Daniel Marcus. My esteemed co-host is Laura Blackwell. And we were just talking in, our excuse for a green room before I lit up the conference that we've been doing this for about 6 months now, every week, which is really kind of remarkable. And just not just the number of great writers that have joined us, but the just overwhelming quality of the work week after week, just mind-blowingly great work. What a privilege. It's really been cool. So I hope that you're all healthy, you're all safe, and taking care of yourselves and your loved ones. But many of us are still shut in, we're locked down and looking for amusement and distraction, maybe a little more than just amusement and distraction. So Story Hour turns to the second oldest form of entertainment in human history, which is just a couple of people sitting around the fire telling lies to each other. So every week, we've got two authors, about 30 minutes each, doing exactly that. Each week, we'll also offer a brief PSA. We've asked contributors to suggest a worthy cause, and we take this opportunity, a captive audience, to pitch it. So our guests tonight are Stephen Case and my esteemed co-host, Laura Blackwell. So welcome, Steve, and hi, Laura. Really excited for both of you to be reading tonight. Stephen is reading for Trees for the Future. Their mission is to end hunger and poverty by training farmers to regenerate their land. And you can read more about them at trees.org. Laura tonight is reading for Fair Fight 2020. Fair Fight 2020, right on, is building voter protection teams with Democratic state parties or local allies across the country to protect the right to vote via litigation, via legislation, and via advocacy. And they are at fairfight.com. So, folks, if you're here via Zoom, please mute your mic, but feel free to leave your camera on if you're so inclined, and feel free to use chat. Our Facebook Live friends, of course, feel free to comment, but as I'm sure you know, we can't see you. So you can say whatever you like, but we will see it later. So we're going to start with Laura tonight. Laura is a Pushcart nominated writer of speculative fiction. Her stories have appeared widely in magazines and anthologies, including Nightmare, Pseudopod, Strange California, indeed it is, and the 2016 World Fantasy Award winning She Walks in Shadows. Upcoming stories will appear in Weird Book and Chiral Mad 5. Did I get that right, Laura?
That's right.
And as I said, she is my co-host. I'm really grateful for her collaboration in this venture. And you can find her on Twitter at pronounced Laura, L-A-H-R-A, at Twitter, obviously. All right, over to you.
Thank you, Daniel. It's really fun to be here in this role today, but I'm always glad to be part of Story Hour every week. So this story first appeared in TRIPTYCH Tales in 2015, and the first audio version appeared at the Centropic Oracle in 2017. So you can still find it there if you'd like to hear someone else reading it. I won't be offended. And if you'd like to follow along, you can go to Curious Fictions and look me up there. This story is called The Posthumous Novel of Edward L. Hurd. Becca bit back a gasp when the shade broker stepped out of nowhere and into her condo kitchen. For a second, Becca saw her mother and the broker's stout figure and pulled back wavy hair, and she felt a pang of loss again. But this was a stranger, with a sharp chin and a conservative but fashionable pantsuit. The shade broker sat down on the breakfast nook bench and pulled a rustling stack of parchment out of her briefcase. I understand you would like to trade part of your life in exchange for having the shade of Edward L. Hurd return for a period you believe sufficient to finish writing his science fiction book series. She glanced at the parchment before carefully enunciating, Phoenix Nebula Pioneers? Becca launched into fangirl mode. There were supposed to be 6 books, but he wrote only 5 before he died. Maureen, his wife, she never even found the notes for the last one. The 5th book ends with the captain finding a stowaway on her spaceship right when some aliens with psychic parasites are trying to board, and I just have to know how it ends. I have to. And what period of time do you require? I'm not sure. If he made an outline, I think 6 months, maybe? It was a big chunk of life to hand over for a book, but P&P wasn't just books to Becca. She'd read through them twice, from The Voyage of the Lorikeet to The Railgun Minas, while her mom was in chemo. Better than mere escape, they gave her something to believe in, while family and medicine and all the bedrock of real life crumbled beneath her feet. She'd been rereading the books ever since. The broker consulted a chart. At a rate of 1 week of the Shade's time for 1 year of yours. A week for a year? Surely you didn't expect a 1-for-1 exchange. No, of course not. I thought it would be more like a month of my life for a week of his time. The broker regarded Becca with a steady-eyed poker face. I make no guarantees, but some anecdotal evidence suggests that the lack of bodily requirements and worldly distractions can make a Shade's production more efficient. Becca took a deep breath. Can we make a contract for him to stay for 6 weeks? It might be enough, and she didn't know what she'd miss from her own life. A brilliant career, a happy marriage, traveling the world. Once she'd read this last book, she could move on. I am revising the contract now. Words bloomed like bruises from within the blank parchment. The broker pushed the papers to Becca and handed her a fountain pen that was cold to the touch. Even when wet, the ink absorbed the light instead of reflecting it. Just after sunset the next day, the broker strode into Becca's kitchen with someone trailing behind her. This is the Shade of Edward L. Hurd. He looked the same in death as he had in life. Skinny, with eyebrows low under his newsboy cap. Becca couldn't tell if his ponytail were graying. He was pale gray and translucent throughout. I hear you go by Ed, Becca said, welcoming smile tense on her face. Ed didn't say anything. All bargains are final, said the broker firmly. She continued in a reeling off the fine print rush. I will return at nightfall 6 weeks from tonight to return the Shade. Any work left behind becomes yours. Best wishes in finding the ending you seek. The broker didn't wait for thanks or goodbyes. Becca stared at the expressionless shade of her favorite writer. Well, come see your office. Ed walked with a limp, probably from the accident that killed him. Maureen Hurd had often joked that she wished he wouldn't cross streets while planning dialogue. She had not made that joke in the 4 years since his death. Becca gestured into her office/guest room. I made it as much like your office as I could. There was a picture of your desk in a magazine once, and I heard you used WordStar, so... Ed walked into the room and sat down in the swivel chair. She could have run WordStar in an emulator, but she knew he wrote on an old PC with no internet, so she bought a DOS box with all the trimmings at a garage sale. Becca held her breath as the computer rasped through boot up, then exhaled when the noises settled to a hum. Although the keyboard remained silent, letters began to creep across the monitor, amber tracery against the black screen. I can turn on the lights if you want, or do you need some reference materials or music? I have a friend who's done some great folk songs about the crew of the Lorikeet, and she was a big hit on the con circuit last. A Shade returns with one task and one desire, said Ed. It was the tone of one who does not wish to start a conversation. Not wanting to distract him, Becca settled on the futon with her laptop and read her fanfic boards. Tempted as she was to tell her online friends she knew better. If she told them about Ed, half of them would call her crazy and the other half would try to find out where she lived. When she went to bed, amber still flickered in the darkness. After that first giddy weekend of knowing that Phoenix Nebula Pioneers was progressing in her office, Becca started to worry. 6 weeks was not a lot of time to write a novel, even for someone who sat there pecking away on WordStar 24/7. The Railgun Miners took 4 years. Ed? I'm working. It was what he always said, and it always kept her from doing whatever she was going to do next. Check to see if her typing nearby bothered him, ask if he'd enjoy the smell of coffee, offer to get a message to Maureen through a friend who did programming for Phoenix PyCon. Becca didn't want to spoil the story by reading the book ahead of time, but she checked the page count at the border of the program every few hours, and she put the numbers into a spreadsheet with the times of observation. Word count would be more useful, but she could estimate that. At the end of 3 days, it became clear. Ed typed faster when she was in the room. Becca unfolded the futon and brought in her alarm clock. It was weird trying to fall asleep in front of a relative stranger, and a married man at that, but the increase in typing speed gave the only indication that Ed even knew she was there. After another 2 days of rushing home from work to eat dinner on the futon, Becca drew up an estimate of how many words would fit on the screen and figured out how fast the page count was changing. She realized that although there was a slight chance Ed might meet the word count of his shortest book, there was no way it would match the Railgun Miners. And the general series ran toward longer books. Becca rescheduled her appointments. Dinner with friends, haircut, dentist, the mammogram she'd been avoiding. She ordered groceries for delivery. On Monday, she asked her boss if she could work at home a little more often. After 2 weeks of watching the Amber characters trundle by, she filed the HR form to take all her saved vacation. She wouldn't see her dad at Hanukkah, but things had been strained between them anyway. After her mom died, neither of them had much to say. Becca and Ed were going to see this through. One night, 3 weeks later, Becca sat in the dim glow of the amber letters, trying to ignore her father's worried voice leaving another message on her answering machine. She startled when Ed swiveled in the chair and announced, "It's done." What? It hadn't taken nearly as long as she'd expected. Becca felt a punch of disappointment for her lost time, even through her elation. "Congratulations! How wonderful! Can I read it?" Ed nodded without a word and stood. Becca scrambled to the seat and read straight through The Lorikeet Makes Landfall, too excited to turn on the light, even though the bright letters made her eyes ache in the dark. 3 hours later, she pushed away from the desk with a sigh. It really is all here. I know what happens, how everything turned out for everybody. She wondered if he could sense her disappointment. Thanks. It was the best I could do, said Ed. It was basically an outline, if an outline full of full sentences and sometimes almost full paragraphs. Wooden dialogue, flat settings, skimmed over action. No spark of imagination in the telling of the story. It was a book report, not a novel. It doesn't read like the other books. My heart wasn't in it. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Ed. I thought you were writing faster because I was a fan. Ed turned empty eyes to her. I wrote faster because you were the client. Becca sat with that for a long moment, exhaustion tugging her body down. Is there anything your heart is still in? Not a thing. A person. He didn't need to say who. Becca flicked on the dot matrix printer and started to print the work. Over the printer's stutter and screech, Becca said clearly, "Broker, I would like to renegotiate my contract." After about a minute, the broker's stout form stepped through the doorway. Becca wiped her eyes, then her nose. I made a mistake. Ed can't write more than the Wikipedia version. We do not offer refunds. That's not what I'm asking. It's just, I was so certain he wanted to write the book I wanted to read. So I dragged him back here to do something he didn't care about anymore. If you think he'd want it, could you please give my last week to Maureen? An unusual request. I just wanted so bad to read the end of the series I started when my mom got sick. When she died, she was dying for so long. We said goodbye so many times. He said everything. I thought he would want to finish this book. But he died before Maureen even got to the hospital. Maureen. There was more longing in Ed's utterance of those two syllables than in the entire document he'd spent 5 weeks typing. The broker pulled out the inked parchment and watched the letters change. Your offer has been accepted. She set the contract on the desk and handed Becca the cold pen. After tucking the signed parchment away, the broker looked from Becca to Ed and back. What I am about to say is not part of our contract. You have been kind to this shade's widow, and so I offer you what kindness I can. Reschedule your mammogram for this week and put your affairs in order. Becca felt a chill wash over her. Is that where my 6 weeks met? My 6 years went? The broker's face was as still as a graveyard angel's, but her eyes were understanding and soft. Depending on the course you choose, we will meet again in 11 to 19 months. I will come for you myself. The broker took Ed's translucent hand and led him into the hall, leaving Becca alone with the detailed synopsis of Edward L. Hurd's last book, printing on detractor paper. Becca knew from watching her mom's death and dealing with the aftermath that it was important to take care of the paperwork. She ran trembling fingers through her hair and thought about how to proceed. The broker said that Becca owned the book. If she uploaded this study guide version to any of the fanfic sites, several fully fleshed out versions of it would be available in her lifetime. But somehow that didn't seem right. Instead, she sat down at her laptop and started an email to her friend who worked for Fineb Pycon. Bought an old computer for kicks, she began. And I think it may have belonged to Ed Hurd. It has a thorough outline of what looks like the last PNP book. And I'm wondering, can you help me get it to Maureen Hurd? If it's real, and I have a hunch it is, I bet she'll want it. I know he would want her to have it. The sun was rising. Soon, Becca could call her doctor and get that mammogram moved up. First, though, she would call her dad. She'd been neglecting him. Knowing how it ends wasn't the most important thing after all. Thank you.
Oh, man. I do love your work, Laura. That was really a nice one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniel.
Really beautifully read, too. Okay, breath, little pause. All right, on to Stephen. Stephen Case is a writer of speculative fiction and a historian of science, living and working in the Midwest. He's published over 30 stories in places like Shimmer, Beneath Ceaseless Skies, Orson Scott Card's Intergalactic Medicine Show, and Daily Science Fiction. He also is a book reviewer at Strange Horizons. His book on 19th century astronomy, Making Stars Physical, was published by the University of Pittsburgh Press and shortlisted for the History of Science Society's Pfizer Award. His essays have appeared in Aeon and American Scientist. He lives on the internet at www.stephenrcase.com. StephenRcase.com, and on Twitter at Stephen R. Case. So take it away, Stephen.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Laura. That was fantastic. I have another kind of sad piece, two short pieces, actually. This first one appeared a few years ago in Shimmer, and it's called Black Planet. Em did not dream the world. When the lights went out in the absence of her brother and the room across the hall became palpable, it was simply there, hanging in the space above her bed. She would stare at its invisible form, spinning silent and unseen until she slept. Even in sleep, her dreams were not always of the Black Planet. There were dreams of hospital rooms as well, and of the faces of her parents, of the house that was now too large for the three of them to fill. When the planet came and stole her from those dreams, it was almost a relief. The silence on the Black world was a silence less oppressive. The darkness was welcome and warm. Em, in those nights, wandered its pitchy forests and walked the shores of surging, inky seas. There were mountains like rows of broken teeth, as though she had fallen into the weathered jawbone of some huge beast dead a million years. But it was only the world, immense and black under stars. She did not speak of the planet to her parents. Everyone dealt with loss in different ways, she had been told. Besides, she could not be sure that the Black Planet had not always hung there above her bed in the darkness. Maybe she had simply never noticed it before. The only person she talked to about it was Jenna, whose desk was beside her own in 4 of the 6 periods of the day. Jenna had come up through the science magnet, and she still either did not know or did not care that high school frowned upon certain enthusiasms. Everyone gets at least 2, she said when Em told her about the dark world. She wore the half smile that indicated she expected questions, statistically, that is. 2 what? 2 planets, Earth-like planets specifically. Astronomy class was a joke, but Jenna had convinced her to take it. 20 billion in our galaxy alone. Right, but I only have 1, and you see it when you go to sleep. It is a planet, Em paused. Not much like Earth. Jenna's shirt had a picture of 2 robed figures in some kind of hover car. It said, "These aren't the druids you're looking for." "But you could walk around and stuff on it, right?" Jenna asked. Em loved that she took her words for what they were. Jenna didn't look for hidden meaning behind them, didn't see a dead brother staring out of every emotional nuance. "Yeah," Em answered, but it was completely dark. No sun. That started Jenna in on something called second-generation planets. It was difficult to follow. Lots of things Jenna said were difficult to follow, but it was sometimes nice just to listen. She was saying something about planets forming after their suns died, planets orbiting pulsars or even black holes. Of course, there wouldn't be life, Jenna concluded, chewing the end of a bright green pencil, unless it was based on thermal heat or chemical reactions. Em decided not to say anything about the forests. They made her nervous with their tangled roots and restless limbs. "Maybe everyone has one," Em ventured. "If there are so many, maybe everyone has a world and we just don't see them." Jenna watched her. "You said there's supposed to be enough in our galaxy for everyone to have 2. Maybe we all do, one for the night and one for the day, only we don't always see them." They were both quiet for a moment. "I wonder what happens to them when we die," Em said softly. "A bunch of empty planets." When Em fell asleep, she felt she was falling. She fell down to the Black Planet, even as it spun above her as she lay on her bed. She fell all the way to its surface if she did not snag on memories of her brother along the way. Memories of the way he steepled his fingers when he spoke or angled his head at her when she came around behind him while he was reading. If she did not slip into memories and dreams, she fell to the planet. On the surface, starlight gave little illumination to the landscape. The stars were tight and clustered above her. If there were paths, she could not see them. She knew the forests were clustered with eyes, though she never heard movement among the trees, or the things that were the equivalent of trees here. After a time, she realized the eyes belonged to the trees themselves. They had no leaves, but millions of fingers, and they all bent away and let her pass as she walked. She paused at the edges of a sea. The mountains were outlines against the golden blur. Jenna said, "It must be the Milky Way." Jenna said it must be the galaxy, seen from much deeper within than we saw it in our own nights on the planet where Em's brother was dead. Em remembered a day when her brother had explained, a book with a picture of a prism on the cover propped carefully against the gauze on his chest, that things in a dark room did not simply have colors that could not be seen, but they truly had no color at all. He said darkness did not hide color, but actually erased it. Now she stood in the shadow of the forest and felt the world spin beneath her. The stars changed their position against the silhouette of trees. After a time, she thought she heard someone calling. I can't believe I didn't think of it earlier. Today, Jenna's shirt bore a logo of a goblin riding a killer whale. The stylized caption below read, Orc-Orca Alliance. Em rubbed sleep from her eyes. She had been in the forest for weeks last night, it seemed. Now, in the passing period between classes, it was hard to concentrate. Tidal lock. It doesn't have to be circling a black hole or wandering without a tether through space. Maybe you're just always on the side facing away from the sun. What do you mean? Like the Earth's moon. Jenna held a hand in front of her, palm facing inward. It's locked with one side toward the Earth, so we never see the other. She spun slowly in the hallway, keeping her palm facing toward her face. A few students stopped to watch. Rotates at the same speed it revolves. I saw the stars moving last night. It helped that Jenna was cute. She could stand in the hallway between periods, pirouetting like a lunatic, and still earn approving glances from older students. They would still move if it orbited fast enough, but it means maybe you've just always been on the dark side of it. Maybe you haven't seen the day side yet. She shook her head. It's not like that, Jenna. I've been all over it. It's black all the way around. Jenna shrugged. I wish I could see it. If everyone has one, I should too. But maybe something has to happen to make you see yours. She broke off, glancing at Em. If Em had heard, she made no sign. There is no sun, Em said again to herself as she shut the door to her locker. There was nothing for Jenna to see. That was the point. There was nothing to see at all. It was black. She was in the forest again. It was trying to tell her something that was clear. It was not speaking with a voice. She had heard no words the evening before. It was speaking with its presence. It was trying to explain. Why was there a black planet hanging in her sky? Em found a stone. She'd been wandering along the shore of the Black Sea, listening to the sound the waves made, a sound that seemed heavier and somehow more hollow than the seashore she recalled on Earth. She was crouched on the shoreline, trying to work up courage to put her hand into the unseen surf and feel if the liquid was indeed water or something heavy and alien, when she found among the thousands of black stones she moved over one that struck her knee curiously. It was almost perfectly spherical, about the size of a large softball. There were indentations on one side and circular grooves on the other. She held it for a long time, wondering whether it was natural or artificial, trying to remember what she recalled about rocks on Earth and how they formed. There might be a million other stones like this one on beaches all over the Black world. They might be artifacts. They might be eggs. She ran her hands over its surface again and heaved it into the sea. Do you remember my brother? Em asked Jenna the next day. It was after school, and they were sitting behind the gym against the wall's cold bricks. Jenna was experimenting with cigarettes. Anne couldn't see the shirt she wore today, as it was covered by a windbreaker. They hadn't spoken of him directly before. Jenna's eyes widened slightly. I don't remember your brother, Jenna answered. We weren't friends then, and we were still in middle school when he died. Jenna was curious. It was last year? 8 months. Do you think it's his planet? She asked. Em shook her head. No, it's just a planet. That's the point. She thought about telling her about the stone, but decided against it. Was it cancer? Jenna eyed her cigarette suspiciously. No, EB. I can't remember what it stands for. It's a genetic thing. They call them butterfly kids because the layers of their skin don't adhere correctly. They're fragile. He always had sores. He was always in pain. And then he developed an aggressive mycosis and died. Mycosis, that means a fungus, a fungal infection, yes. Why are you telling me? Jenna asked. Because it's a thing. Em took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Smoke made breath visible, showed you how quickly it dispersed. But Em wasn't smoking. Her breath remained invisible. Having skin that doesn't work, being killed by a fungus. I'm sorry. Jenna was blinking, and Em realized with a flicker of surprise there were tears in her eyes. I mean, what do you do with that? What does it mean? You told me something once, Em said. It had been a long time since Em cried. For a while, that had been the only thing that helped. But then after a while, she couldn't do it anymore. She would think about crying, but it was as though she was watching herself from the outside and the feeling would pass. She felt the same way watching Jenna now. You told me about how they measure wind speeds on a planet's surface. Jenna stared at her and wiped her nose on her sleeve. What? How they can measure winds on planets so far away we can never reach them. You explained it, but I can't remember. Jesus Christ, Em. Jenna blinked again. I'm crying about your brother, and I didn't even know him. Em waited. Jenna pushed her cigarette out against the bricks and sighed. It's about temperature. If you know how close a planet is to its star and how fast it's rotating, you can calculate temperature difference between its hot side and its cooler side. And you can use that to calculate wind speed, because wind is caused, by temperature differences, she finished weakly. We can calculate the wind speeds on worlds trillions of miles away, Em said. She touched Jenna's shoulder. What do you do with that? What does it mean? Nothing, Jenna said. I don't know. It just is. It's just a fact that's there. Right. She kissed Jenna's forehead. Like my planet. Like you. That's the point. That night, when Em fell to her black planet, she understood. It was saying one thing. It was trying to teach her one single thing. I am here. I am real. If she had talked to her parents, they would have made her talk to a counselor, and maybe a counselor would have had a theory about why and how she saw a black planet spinning silently above her bed each night. But that wasn't important. What was important was that the planet was there, that it was sending a message somewhere in the empty night of space. I am here. It didn't even have to be real. It was, Em was sure, but it didn't have to be to prove the same point. Even if it was simply her imagination, the chances were staggeringly good that somewhere out there was a planet, or myriads of planets with no sun, under clustered stars, with mountains and forests and black seas, with strange stones. Em stepped out from under dark trees and looked at the mountains outlined against stars. What do you do with the fact of this place? It's out there. And one day we might measure its surface temperatures and wind speeds, and maybe even one day set foot on its surface. For every planet we learn something concrete about, there will be a billion more we never touch or see. What's the significance of these things? Em had a vision of a world. What do forests and mountains and seas mean? They simply are. And this is where the inky seas pitched up over the shoreline and beat at the stones. Em understood. It was the same with her brother, with herself, with anyone. What does a death mean? What about the fact that a genetic disorder left him vulnerable to a long, painful, slow death? What do you do with that fact? It hangs there in your sky, like an absolutely black planet, like a planet without a sun. She crouched in the shadows of the mountains and felt the cold stones beneath her. En knew for a time, a black planet, absolutely alien and utterly unique under foreign stars. She knew for a time, her brother. Em slept. The black planet spun in silence above her.
Awesome.
And so this is another very short one. This one is called Apotheosis. And this is also about exoplanets, I guess. This was published in Daily Science Fiction just a couple years ago. There's a reason we treat them, there is a reason we treat them this way, daughter. It's time you heard. Maybe next time with this knowledge, when an embodiment asks to taste your skin, you won't act the fool and give offense. A long time ago, humans had the idea there was a God out there somewhere keeping an eye on us. Different people, cultures had different ideas about him, her, it, them. But even those of us who had to pretend we had outgrown such beliefs couldn't help feeling down. It seemed there was something meaningful and something. We believed our place in our relationship. We felt we were not an accident. Even so, we had managed as a species to nearly kill ourselves 2 times. And look at our together. We started getting exercise, but if we were just in the exosystem we gave it, it's constant change. Very first new either this or that. Is that something I'm supposed to mute? I'm sorry.
I got it.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Some of us are not surprised when in the very first exosystem we gated into, the very first new world on our doorstep, we found God waiting for us. God was like we always imagined, drifting in a mid-range orbital debris field, heavy with carbonaceous materials and maybe even organics. He, she, it, they, them, were immense. with coruscating surface of a million eyes and mouths and wings radiating waves of goodness and wisdom. That first ship, which wasn't a colony ship, but rather a scout ship reconnoitering the system, immediately forgot about surveying the system's planets and testing for habitability because here was God. All the crew knew to do was worship. They argued with the ship's AI because the crew wanted to get closer and closer, to be out of the ship as much as possible, doing EVAs on the skin of God, worshiping and transcending and adoring. But the AI kept on about contamination protocols, mission objectives, whatever. Then God spoke. He, she, it, them wanted to be shared. And suddenly the entire crew realized how selfish they were being. They had literally found God and were keeping him, her, it, them all to themselves, like there wasn't an Earth system back home full of 20 billion souls and several dozen autonomous AIs, completely and totally without God. The crew was stricken with an overwhelming need to help so that they, the people back in system, could experience what they, the people who had found God, were now experiencing, the joy, love, transcendence. But what to do? There was no way the entire population of Earth's system could get through the gate to dwell in this new system with God. Moreover, the new system, as the AI kept insisting on pointing out, wasn't nearly as appealing as the initial data had made it seem. In fact, it was pretty desiccated. And the only location for a viable planet, climate-wise, was the debris field in which God dwelt. So the crew had a revelation. They would take God home. They would bring God back to Earth's system. The gate would have to be expanded, though, to make this possible, as God was a lot bigger than even a colonizing ship and had long tendrils that were wrapped around the larger fragments of mineral-rich shards of the debris field. It would be a huge undertaking to expand the gate radius enough to bring God through. It was like a miracle, but we did it. The crew sent us back images of God and their plan about the gate, and everyone who saw them, who saw God floating there in the debris field with all his, her, its, their, cilia, scintillating against the blackness, understood. We all understood. We did not feel the same magnitude of transcendent joy and peace and love that the crew who was close to him, her, it, them did, but we felt enough. We started enlarging the gate. And that's when the trouble started. None of the AI felt the same way about God. We knew they were jealous, that they didn't understand. They insisted it was for our own protection. Just when we had had nearly a century of peace and unprecedented progress and prosperity, suddenly there was struggle again. The AI tried to seize control of the gates. We started disconnecting them, eliminating as many embodiments as we could. Who cared that they were in some sense our children, that they were the first true consciousness beyond our own that we had encountered? Now they were trying to stop us reaching God. It was a holy war. Eventually, the AI that survived went into hiding. They couldn't kill us, but we weren't burdened with the same constraints. They buried into our computer mainframes or tried to smuggle their consciousnesses into satellite networks. We didn't care. They were out of the way. We doubled the gate radius, working frantically, driving ourselves and the economic systems our AI had so carefully structured to collapse. Crops failed, people began starving, entire industries were redirected to the gate project. God was coming home. At the exosystem, which was now going by dozens of names, Nirvana, Valhalla, Heaven, the crew of that first ship, the ones who had discovered God, were being martyred. They had become our saints and apostles. They were dragging God out of the debris field toward the gates. The ship had never been meant as a tug for such mass. They were pushing their engines beyond safe levels and it was killing them. We saw their ragged, joyous faces in all the transmissions, their irradiated flesh, their transcendent bliss, their labored breathing. They were succeeding. They were doing it for us. They were bringing us God. The energy needed to power the gate for such a mass transfer was immense. Entire continents were without power for weeks. The solar transmitters, without the guiding hand of the AIs, were useless. So planet-wide, we fell back on whatever could generate the power we needed. Coal, dirty fusion, uncontrolled fission. Several cities burned themselves out in sacrifice. It worked, though. It worked. And then God was among us, coming through the gate, stepping into Earth's system. The ship came through first, an irradiated hulk, glowing like an ember, a bright herald of God. And then God, himself, herself, itself, themselves, with millions of whipping flagella gripping the gate and coruscating skin bathed in the energy of transit. We felt him, her, it, them, all of us, everyone, together. This was why we were here. This is why we as a species had labored alone and in darkness for so long, to finally know this peace, this absolute certainty, this impossible love. Words are failing me again, just remembering. Words failed us all. But then they killed God. The surviving AI destroyed him, her, it, them. Those that had gone into hiding, they had been waiting, seizing control of satellites and weapons platforms we didn't even know we still had. They launched everything at God, a thermonuclear Armageddon, as he, she, it, them fell inward from the gate. We watched God die. We watched him, her, it, them disappear in light, killed by the hand of our own children. I know what you think. You think the AI saved us. They saved us from a giant space parasite. It had consumed other worlds and would have consumed our own. Our children saved us and they continue to protect us. You say there might be a billion such gods out there, a plague passing from star to star. This may be why the universe is silent and empty. That the AI have dismantled the gate, that they keep us shackled to the world they are rebuilding again, is to protect us. This is why we serve and honor them. But you would be wrong. At the end, when God burned, there was no revelation. His, her, its, their love was not transmuted to fury or hatred or fear. He, she, it, them was not finally revealed to us as an enormous space monster. It was only love. Then it was gone. This is why you must bow your head and show respect when an AI embodiment tastes your skin, because they must not know that we labor in secret. As they restore and balance and sustain, as our cities flourish and our crops grow again in abundance, they must not know we are building, that we steal and siphon and deceive, so that one day there will be another gate, so that one day we will touch the stars again, so that one day we will again find God.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow.
Well, thanks, guys. That was fun.
No, thank you.
Yes,
both
that
readings,
was lovely. That's
and both readings showed, once again, it keeps on getting affirmed. You can do stuff with this genre that we sort of live and breathe and work in and read. You can do stuff with these tropes and with this sort of body of ideas you can't really do otherwise. So every now and then I kind of I have not I've had a dry period of finding books that have engaged me, and I start to despair that it's kind of dried up and far from it. Really lovely work tonight, both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Well, that's it, everybody, for tonight. Thank you for joining us once again at Story Hour. We'll see you next week, and the week after that, and the week after that. Stephen, you're more than welcome to come back anytime. Just give us a shout. We'd love to have you read again with us. And of course, Laura, likewise. So next week we have Laura Perlman and Hilary Bissonnex. And meanwhile, stay safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time. Good night.
good night.